Ananya Sharma arrived in Canada with hope in her suitcase and fear she didn't yet understand, while Rajiv Malhotra appeared to be a successful, respected employer hiding a dangerous secret behind his quiet suburban home. Ananya grew up in a modest village in India where opportunities were limited and dreams often felt far away. From a young age, she learned the value of hard work, helping her family with daily chores while quietly hoping for a chance to change her life. When an overseas placement agency offered her a job as a domestic helper in Canada, it felt like fate finally opening a door. The promise of steady income, legal work, and the ability to support her aging parents convinced her to leave everything familiar behind. The journey to Canada was overwhelming. Ananya had never traveled so far or seen such a different world. Tall buildings, cold air, and unfamiliar faces made her feel small and alone. Still, she reminded herself why she came. Her employer was a successful Indian-origin businessman living in a peaceful suburban area. The house was large, spotless, and quiet, surrounded by neatly trimmed lawns and polite neighbors. At first glance, it seemed like the safest place she could be. In the early days, Ananya focused only on her work. She woke before sunrise, cleaned the house, prepared meals, and followed every instruction carefully. She wanted to prove she was grateful and reliable. Her employer appeared polite and respectful, often praising her efficiency. These small gestures gave her comfort, making her believe she had made the right choice. She trusted that her employer would protect her as promised by the agency. But even during those first weeks, Ananya felt an uneasy silence inside the house. The rooms were too quiet, the nights too long. Being a live-in maid meant she had little contact with the outside world. Her phone calls home became her only connection to safety. She ignored the strange feeling in her chest, convincing herself it was just homesickness. Ananya believed this new beginning would lead to a better future, unaware that the calm environment was hiding the start of a dangerous and irreversible journey. As weeks turned into months, the atmosphere inside the house slowly began to change in ways Ananya could not fully explain. Her employers started finding reasons to be around her more often, lingering in rooms where there was no work to be done. At first, the attention seemed harmless, almost friendly, and Ananya told herself she was imagining things. She reminded herself that she was far from home and needed to stay focused on her job. Small changes became noticeable. Her work schedule shifted without explanation, keeping her busy late into the evening. Simple instructions were replaced with personal questions about her past, her family, and why she had chosen to leave India. Ananya answered carefully, sensing that these questions crossed an invisible boundary. She felt uncomfortable but remained silent, knowing her employment and visa depended entirely on this household. The praise she once received for her work slowly took on a different tone. Compliments felt heavier, more personal, and harder to ignore. Ananya began avoiding eye contact and tried to stay in areas of the house where she felt least exposed. Despite her efforts, she noticed she was being watched. The sense of safety she once felt began to fade, replaced by constant awareness and quiet fear. Outside the house, life continued normally. Neighbors waved politely, unaware of what was happening inside. Ananya was rarely allowed to leave alone, and her phone use was subtly monitored. She realized how isolated she had become. Without friends, support, or knowledge of local laws, she felt trapped in a situation she never expected. Ananya struggled internally, blaming herself for feeling uneasy. She worried that speaking up would only make things worse. Each day, the house felt less like a workplace and more like a cage. The attention she received was no longer kindness but control. Still, she endured it, believing patience and silence were her only options. The unspoken tension inside the house slowly turned into something more dangerous and deeply confusing. What began as unwanted attention crossed into a secret connection that Ananya never believed would happen to her. The relationship was never equal, never openly agreed upon, and always hidden. Fear guided every moment of it. Ananya felt torn between shame and survival, unsure how she had become trapped in a situation she could not escape. The house took on a strange double life. During the day, everything appeared normal and controlled. At night, the silence felt heavy, filled with anxiety. Ananya lived in constant worry that someone might find out, even though she rarely saw anyone. The secrecy weighed on her mind, affecting her sleep and focus. She knew that if the truth came out, the blame would fall on her, not on the man who held all the power. Her employer became increasingly protective of his image. He reminded Ananya how easily her job, her visa, and her freedom could disappear. These reminders were not loud or violent, but calm and calculated. Ananya understood the message clearly. She felt invisible, reduced to a problem that needed to be controlled rather than a human being. In moments of clarity, Ananya began documenting what she experienced. She wrote brief notes, dates, and strange incidents in a small notebook she hid among her clothes. This was her only way of holding onto the truth. She hoped that if something went wrong, her story would not completely disappear with her. The emotional toll grew heavier each day. Ananya felt disconnected from herself, trapped in a life she never chose. She still dreamed of safety and freedom, but those dreams felt distant now. The relationship that had been forced into secrecy had changed everything. Ananya sensed that it would not end quietly. Deep down, she felt that the situation was moving toward a breaking point, and when it came, it would destroy more than just her silence. The balance of fear inside the house shifted as the employer's behavior became more controlling and unpredictable. What once felt like quiet pressure slowly turned into constant supervision. Ananya noticed that her movements were being watched more closely, her routines questioned, and her mistakes highlighted. Even small actions seemed to invite suspicion. The sense of being trapped grew stronger with each passing day. The house itself began to feel smaller. Doors that were once open were now often closed. Ananya was discouraged from stepping outside unless absolutely necessary. She sensed that the employer feared losing control more than anything else. Any sign of independence made the atmosphere tense. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken threats and warning signals. Ananya's fear sharpened into awareness. She realized that the secrecy protecting the employer's reputation had become dangerous for her. She began to understand that if the situation were exposed, she could be blamed, dismissed, or even worse. The power imbalance was complete. She had no legal knowledge, no support system, and no safe place to turn to. In response, Ananya quietly prepared for survival. She began saving small amounts of money from groceries and hidden tasks. She carefully gathered her documents, making copies when possible and hiding them in different places. Every move was cautious, driven by the fear of being discovered. She did not share her plan with anyone, knowing trust could cost her everything. At night, she replayed every detail of her day, searching for signs of danger. Her instincts told her time was running out. The employer's mood changed rapidly, swinging between calm control and sharp tension. Ananya knew she could not stay much longer. The house that once represented opportunity now felt like a trap closing in. She believed that leaving quietly was her only chance to survive, unaware that her growing determination had already been noticed. The final night arrived with an unsettling calm that felt unnatural. The house was unusually quiet, and the air carried a sense of tension that Ananya could not ignore. She went about her routine carefully, aware that every movement mattered. Her belongings were already reduced to the bare minimum, hidden and ready. She believed that if she stayed invisible just a little longer, she might leave without being noticed. As darkness settled outside, something shifted inside the house. The familiar pattern of control gave way to instability. The employer's behavior became erratic, marked by restlessness and visible agitation. Ananya sensed that her intention to leave had been discovered, even though she had said nothing. Fear tightened around her, and her instincts warned her that she was no longer safe. What followed was sudden and violent. The silence of the house was broken by chaos hidden behind closed walls. Evidence later suggested a desperate struggle, marked by overturned objects and signs of panic. In those moments, Ananya's attempts to protect herself were no match for the power and rage unleashed against her. The imbalance that had defined her life in that house reached its most horrific conclusion. By morning, the peaceful suburban street was transformed into a scene of shock. Authorities arrived to find Ananya lifeless, her future stolen before she could escape. The house that once appeared orderly now revealed traces of violence that could not be erased. Neighbors watched in disbelief as police sealed off the property, struggling to understand how such brutality could exist so close to their own homes. News of the murder spread quickly, sending waves of fear and anger through the community. Ananya's name, once unknown, became the focus of a growing investigation. Her death marked the end of her silent suffering, but the beginning of a search for truth. What happened that night could no longer remain hidden, and the calm image of the household began to. The investigation moved quickly as authorities began piecing together what happened inside the house. The carefully maintained image of a respectable home unraveled as forensic teams examined every corner. Signs of a struggle contradicted early attempts to present the death as an accident. Broken items, disturbed furniture, and marks throughout the room told a story of fear and resistance. Digital evidence became a critical focus. Phone records revealed unusual patterns, including deleted messages and late-night activity. Security cameras, both inside and outside the house, captured movements that did not align with the employer's initial statements. These inconsistencies raised serious doubts and shifted the direction of the case. What was meant to protect privacy had instead recorded the truth. Ananya's belongings were searched carefully. Hidden among her clothes, investigators discovered the small notebook she had kept. The notes, written in simple detail, described escalating control, fear, and moments that now made sense in hindsight. Dates and observations matched other evidence, strengthening the case against the employer. Her quiet attempt to preserve the truth became one of the strongest pieces of evidence. As questioning continued, the employer's calm appearance began to fracture. Timelines changed, explanations conflicted, and important details were missing. Investigators recognized patterns common in cases driven by secrecy and power. The more the employer tried to distance himself from the crime, the more evidence surfaced linking him to it. The community watched in disbelief as details emerged. Neighbors struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the growing list of revelations. Media attention increased, exposing the hidden reality behind the suburban calm. The case was no longer just about a single crime. It had become a powerful example of how silence, control, and fear can lead to deadly consequences. The arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood and beyond. Police took the employer into custody as evidence continued to stack against him. The moment marked the collapse of the carefully constructed life he had presented to the world. News cameras lined the street as the story spread across media platforms, exposing details that no one expected to hear. As investigators revealed the motive, the truth became impossible to ignore. Fear of exposure, loss of reputation, and the collapse of social standing had driven the crime. The secret relationship, once hidden behind locked doors, was now public knowledge. The power imbalance at the center of the case became a key focus, drawing attention to the vulnerability of immigrant domestic workers. The employer's background, success, and community respect were no longer shields. Core documents laid out a timeline that showed growing control, isolation, and eventual violence. Each piece of evidence reinforced the same conclusion. What began as manipulation ended in murder when control was threatened. Public reaction was intense. Advocacy groups spoke out, calling for stronger protections for foreign workers. Ananya's life story was shared widely, turning her from a silent victim into a symbol of a much larger issue. Her family in India learned the truth through international news, experiencing grief mixed with anger and unanswered questions. Inside the legal process, the employer's defense weakened as facts outweighed excuses. Attempts to shift blame failed under scrutiny. The case moved steadily toward trial, with prosecutors presenting a clear picture of motive and opportunity. Every step of the process exposed how easily abuse can hide behind respectability. The arrest was not just the end of a man's freedom, but the beginning of accountability. For the community, it was a painful awakening. For Ananya, it was the first step toward justice. Though she could no longer speak, the evidence spoke for her, ensuring. The case reached its conclusion after months of legal proceedings that kept the public watching closely. The court examined every piece of evidence, from forensic reports to digital records and Ananya's written notes. The truth, once hidden within the walls of a quiet home, was now laid bare. The verdict brought a sense of closure to a story that had shaken many people, even though no decision could undo the loss of a life. The conviction confirmed what the investigation had revealed from the beginning. Abuse of power, secrecy, and fear had led to a horrific crime. The employer was held accountable, and the respected image he once enjoyed was permanently destroyed. The sentence reflected the seriousness of the crime, sending a strong message that status and wealth cannot protect someone from justice. For Ananya's family, the outcome was bittersweet. They found some comfort in knowing the truth had been acknowledged, but their grief remained heavy. She had left home seeking dignity and opportunity, only to become a victim of exploitation and violence. Her story became a painful reminder of the risks faced by many migrant workers who live and work in isolation. The impact of the case extended beyond the courtroom. Discussions about worker protection, employer accountability, and immigration safeguards gained new urgency. Advocacy organizations used Ananya's story to push for change, hoping to prevent similar tragedies. Her life, though cut short, became a catalyst for awareness. As time passed, the neighborhood returned to its quiet routine, but the memory of the crime lingered. Behind ordinary doors, hidden dangers can exist. Ananya's story remains a warning and a lesson. Silence can be deadly, power can corrupt, and justice, though delayed, can still speak for those who no longer can.